All right, so those were a few of the eyewitness accounts of the time when the attack took place. And to add more perspective on this developing story, we're joined by Philippa Tolley, who is a senior producer from Radio New Zealand. Thank you very much indeed, Philippa, for joining us live on this broadcast and beyond. And let me begin by asking you this. We just heard the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, address the media briefing there where she described this as an act of terror. This is an act that in many ways is unprecedented. Give us a sense of what the mood is like in New Zealand in the aftermath of this attack.
Well, it is a completely unprecedented attack. Nothing like this has ever happened in New Zealand before. In an earlier briefing, the Prime Minister actually described this as New Zealand's darkest day. People are utterly shocked that this could happen. The Prime Minister, if you were carrying some of her material, described this as a country of compassion. She said the reason that the attack was probably carried out here was not because it's a place of extremism or an enclave for people with extremist views, but that it's a country that accepts diversity and that appreciates people's right to live and worship in their own way, and that it was a country of compassion. And that's what people have been showing in the aftermath of this. I mean, people have been asked to stay inside and to be cautious, but there have been stories of people taking flowers from their garden, of going to local mosques, which are all shut up. They've been told not to hold any Friday prayers, that everybody should stay at home, but people have, where they have been able to, have been extending their deepest sympathies and their absolute, utter shock that something like this could happen in New Zealand. It is utterly unprecedented.
Absolutely indeed. And was New Zealand taken in by surprise? Because according to the Prime Minister, none of the four suspects who is presently now in custody was on any kind of a terror watch list. Was the expectation that something like this could just not happen in a place like New Zealand?
Well, we do have security and intelligence services, and they do monitor social media traffic. They watch who's coming in over the borders. New Zealand, as you might be aware, as part of the Five Eyes security network, includes Australia, the UK, the US and Canada. So, we are aware of the threats within the world. But as the Prime Minister said, none of these people had come into the watch of any of the security or intelligence services. They weren't on any watch lists at all. So these are obviously people who've kept a very low profile. One of them is confirmed to be an Australian. It doesn't appear that he's been in the country for a very long time, although how long he's been here, that's not clear either. But what it has done is previously New Zealand's security rating was at low. It's now at its maximum. It's at high. Flights are still being allowed to leave New Zealand, but some have been restricted, and there's extra border security at the moment.
Absolutely indeed. And also the amount of meticulous planning that's gone into the execution of the attack. There was an assault rifle that was used and there was also these IEDs that had in fact been tied up to a car which obviously was to be used. My question to you, of course, is how easy is it to acquire these assault rifles in New Zealand, and also how could these individuals have come in possession of these IEDs?
Well, certainly the IED material is not something that would generally be commonly available, but, as we all know, people do manage to get things on the dark net and bring things in. When it comes to firearms, there is quite a strong culture here of the use of firearms, and as far as that, a lot of New Zealand is quite rural. There are farming populations which have legitimate use for guns. Hunting for sport is also, quite a popular endeavour, and there are also the people that use firearms for, target shooting and the like. However, you do have to be licensed, and we don't have the range of automatic rifles that or other weaponry that you would hear maybe were normally available in somewhere like the United States. But we do have a significant level of gun ownership, but people should be properly licensed.
Absolutely indeed. And also the other issue that I need to talk to you about is that of, how immigrants are treated, because, it is 2 mosques that were targeted, and many of those people who are believed to be inside the mosques are said to be people who are either immigrants or perhaps refugees. Is there a fear now amongst the immigrants in terms of the violence that's now been unleashed in the aftermath of this attack?
Well, look, I wouldn't like to speak on behalf of the immigrant population, but New Zealand is a place that people choose to try to come to if they are seeking refugee status, because it's renowned as a peaceful and calm place. I can't for a minute pretend that we're perfect. There is racism in New Zealand. There are times when people are not treated ideally, but by far and away, most of the time, it is a peaceful and accepting place. And the Prime Minister particularly has highlighted how the people who have tragically lost their lives or who may have been injured in this particular attack could well be recent immigrants, people who have chosen New Zealand as a safe place to come. It only adds to the tragedy, and I think New Zealanders would be utterly appalled that this is the reason why New Zealanders could possibly have been targeted, just to prove that nowhere is safe, even some of the places normally regarded as the safest places in the world.
Absolutely, indeed, a safest place in the world. Multiculturalism, diversity and acceptance, that is what Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says defines in many ways New Zealand. But the question that I need to ask you here, considering as to what is being spoken about a lot on social media, only one individual is said to be perhaps of Australian origin. But at this point of time, the identity of those who in fact carried out the attacks is not very clear. But white supremacy is in fact an ideology that is being spoken about a lot on social media and speculated to be, one of the reasons as to what has inspired this act of terror.
Well, yes, nothing else is known about the other individuals who are held in custody under arrest at the moment, although the Prime Minister did refer to just two others being actively involved in the attack. And if you look on social media, of course, it's awash with the vilest comments of all sort. And in fact, unfortunately, some of the material that appears to, although unconfirmed, to have been posted by the Australian individual does seem to have that white supremacist sort of background. There's been a piling in from both sides of people utterly condemning and unfortunately some supporting. But a lot of that support I've seen on social media has actually come from white supremacists overseas, not in New Zealand. But, as we all know, the internet can be a pretty ghastly place at times.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Philippa Tolley, for joining us from Wellington and getting us the latest in terms of what's in fact unfolding. And perhaps what best describes this entire incident is what was said by the New Zealand Prime Minister, where she said, this is not what New Zealand stands for. It is an act of terror that is condemned in the strongest possible words.